How do you protect yourself from scientific misconduct? I'm going to tell you the easy way that everybody tells you. And I'm going to tell you actually what goes on behind the scenes and how to make sure that you're always doing the best that you can possibly be in terms of the scientific rigor. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Maslach. I'm an Associate Professor of Innovation. I created this whole reciprocity project to give back. This is the fundamental reason why, or one of the fundamental reasons why I created the Reciprocity Project, was to create a research platform for non-rejectable research papers and grants. And the idea came from some of the things that are going on with scientific misconduct. And we see this very broadly. And I'm not trying to out anybody here, by the way, if you're watching this. I'm going to make sure that you feel comfortable with all of this, because there's people that many people know that have been doing these things or allegedly have been doing these things. And it's very easy to get into the train of thought to say, well, it's only bad people that do that kind of stuff. And us good people will never do that kind of stuff, right? So what am I talking about with scientific misconduct? Essentially, you are trying to dupe or trick somebody else to believe that the results that you actually have are better than what they can be or better than what they actually are. Now, why do we actually do that, right? And so what is better? Depending on how you actually look at it, I teach a doctoral class on research methods. It's actually really kind of troubling or difficult to understand what is better in this context. But the standard way that people say is that it's more reliable or more valid. What does that mean? Valid means is that there's some truth that exists and you are approaching that truth. And then reliable is that you can repeatedly test the same thing and get the exact same result in a basic nutshell that we're actually trying to do, or that many people arrive upon the exact same result over time. So, what is going on here in terms of why does this actually happen? Why does scientific misconduct happen? There's all sorts of incentives. I want you to, instead of thinking about that people are trying to perform at their best, I want you to think about scientific research in terms of a couple of different other ways of motivation or logics that we have, right? So it's survival. And we also have, now I'm blanking on it. It'll come back to me, what I was just thinking about. Survival and making sure that you just get by, essentially, right? And it's desperation. That's exactly what I was thinking about. And people don't understand that. But when you're in the scientific game, you feel often in terms of survival and desperation. You need to get a job. You need to get that paper published to get something. And anytime you have that sort of feeling of need inside, that makes you believe that you have to do this to survive. And there is a lot of moments where that happens, where you feel that you have to survive. And so what do we end up doing when you feel that you have to survive? You do everything possible. Right, you do all of the things that your mom and dad probably told you never to do. Is that if it's the only thing for you to do, you're going to do everything possible to make sure that this particular thing happens. Right, so you're going to do things like fabricate data and make up data, or very subtly manipulate or change data to the best that you can do. You will do things where you might plagiarize. That's a super easy one. And I'm not saying that I train people to mimic what other people are doing. That's how you actually do good science. But plagiarism is where you copy word for word of what somebody else has done or the central idea, and you never give them credit for that central idea. It happens all the time. It's like painful, right? The president of Harvard University was caught for plagiarism with her research. I looked at it and I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, that looks like plagiarism to me, but I'm not the judge and jury of that kind of stuff, right? So it's only hearsay at this moment, it's allegations. There's a lot of other things that happen that are easy to manipulate or transform things. Why does this happen, right? So if you get in the logic of desperation, you get a logic of feeling like you need to do something because it's the only way that you get ahead, then you will do things where you're not going to be proud of yourself. Now, one sort of logical thing to think about is that we all have different motivations, we all have different personalities, and we're raised differently, we have different genetics. So some of these things actually, for some people, like a pretty significant portion of the population, I would say, somewhere of 25%, right, of the population have different personalities. Things like, high narcissism or, Machiavellianism, that have high traits, just traits that allow people to do these particular things and they'll never feel it, right? They're sociopaths, psychopaths, those kind of things. And they're never going to feel it. And it's surprising when you look at the numbers, you're like, oh my gosh, a huge number of people actually do this. I haven't seen any legit study, but but I don't really study this area. It's kind of a cursory hobby. But there is, the presumption is that it percolates up. Those things percolate up to the higher levels of success in any particular field. So there's more people at the higher levels that do that. That's presumption. It's a theory. We don't know. I haven't seen definitive evidence that is showing that. Maybe there is. But basically, it percolates up, where there's more and more people doing that kind of things at higher and higher levels. And we have the selection mechanism that happens in education and scientific research where we say only the best get through. Well, guess what happens when you say only the best get through? People manipulate that. We know that happens, right? So how do you, and this is where it's really different, right? So the basic story that people say in terms of how you defend yourself from scientific misconduct is, do things like honesty, right? Reporting misconduct whenever you see it, making sure that you're following guidelines as best as you possibly can. And all of these things are really wonderful. And I appreciate them, and we could do all of the ethics training, we could do all of that kind of stuff and make sure everybody knows about these things. But it's damn hard when you're in the moment of knowing what is good and what is not good, right? What is valid science, what is not valid science? At what moment do we manipulate these things? And the tools that we have today, things like artificial intelligence and large regression models with large amounts of easily available data, that we tried to obfuscate. It's a hard word for me to say, but basically we kind of try to manipulate things so it's easier to get published. We manipulate. So I'm going to be honest, if anybody has ever done the publishing game and gone through the research process, you will know how hard it is to get published. And reviewers and editors are really skeptical. And a big chunk of the onus of blame of all of this scientific misconduct, I believe, is on reviewers and editors and even journals themselves because of the problems that we experience. That's why I'm building the reciprocity platform, right? Like, I want people to do things legitimately. If we have the idea that we can create a non-rejectable research paper, a platform that creates non-rejectable research papers and grants, and it walks you through to get there, none of these problems exist. This desperation does not exist because you start, you're going to get there. But when you say only the best, we only accept the best ones, we only accept only the top 1%. If you say that, guess what's going to happen? What's the motivation there? So I strongly put a lot of weight on the current setup, the current system, and how it's actually set up. The publishers, the granting agencies, the whole works is set up to incentivize people to do poor behavior. Now, I believe I can change this with the reciprocity platform, but I can only do this with your help. But okay, coming back to this, what is going on here? It's easy to manipulate everything around us. And the reason why it's easy to manipulate everything around us is because we don't know. We don't know what the right answer is. There's this presumption that there is this right answer that exists, right? This sort of sun, and we're moving towards the sun. We don't know. Nobody knows. It's an ambiguous world. We are trying to use tools that are horrible, that were never intended to be designed the way that they are. Regression is a tool that wants us to extract a single relationship. The world does not exist in a single relationship. Like, come on, let's get real here. So what we have to do is we have these imperfect tools. Artificial intelligence allows us to write things that seem so convincing, but they're sometimes kind of craptacular in terms of what they generate, but they're damn convincing. So there's all these tools that allows us to do things better. And if you're not an expert, you are not going to be able to see these things. And you're just going to say, well, this is good enough, right? Or we're going to trick things and manipulate things to get in to get into where people want to go. And so what you need to do, this is the counterintuitive, strange thing that you need to do to protect yourself from misconduct, scientific misconduct, is... Now, this is the secret. Be okay with who you are. I want you to really think about this. I want you to internalize this. You are already remarkable. You are already a good person. And I'm pausing on this because these are the things that generate these emotions, where there's this pressure to perform, and somebody is telling you that you're not good enough. Somebody's telling you that you are imperfect. There is this pressure that you need to do this. And I would encourage you, as soon as you start getting into those sort of stuck feelings, where somebody is telling you you need to do this path, you give them the middle finger and you walk away the opposite direction. I want you to really internalize this. Now, why am I telling you to do this? Because as soon as you feel stuck, or there's only one way, or this is the best way, you have incentives to do things that will get you there. Now, if you say, I am an extraordinarily talented person, and anybody anywhere will want to have me on their team, then I have unbelievable job opportunities, not only in the academic game. If that doesn't work out, I could walk away and go do something that's remarkable. Now, if you do not have that feeling, I beg you to work on that feeling, to work on that, like just a little bit of strut. The world is going to really push you down, and it's going to repeatedly push you down. And it's, here's the thing. It could be, you can have 10 wonderful experiences with 10 wonderful people, but there's going to be one person that you're going to run into that's going to tell you that you're awful. And you're going to fixate on that one person that tells you that you're awful, that you're doing the wrong thing. And then you are going to try to manipulate the system to get there. And I want you to remove that. If somebody does that, you walk away. You go find something else. You find another supportive group. You go find somebody that's going to help you out. And if you do this repeatedly, and you remind yourself, I am remarkable, I'm doing okay, and I just simply have to write down my truth, whatever that truth might be, and I repeatedly write down that truth, then you will prevent yourself from going down these dark alleys where I need to manipulate things, or I need to do things that are just not good for the profession. It's not good for you. So here's what's going to happen if you don't do that. And you start getting down that easy alley. It's an extraordinarily easy way of getting down that alley. And I'm not saying I am not above any of this kind of conduct or behavior. It's something that I've learned to actually stand up and say, you know what, I'm good enough. It is a learned thing where I've had to do this because I don't know what the answers are either. I don't know. And I'm never going to know. That is insane to get people to believe that you know what the right answers actually are, We don't know. We're never going to know. We're making this crap up the whole time. So what are the consequences if you do things that you go a little bit too far, that everybody is like, I don't know. You might lose your job. That is happening a lot. So first of all, the standard response is you're going to get a paper people are going to be curious about it, and they're going to, collectively, people are going to discount it. And they're going to say, I don't believe that. But another sort of step up is going to get retracted. And this all depends on the status of where you actually are in terms of the things I strongly believe in social dynamics, right? In the sociology of science, that if you have a tremendous amount of science, a tremendous amount of status, you might be affected disproportionately depending on who you actually are. You might have a more severe penalty, or you might have a less penalty in terms of doing these things. But if you're like everybody else, a normal person, or as I like to say, just a normal dude or dudette, you're likely going to have your paper retracted. Retraction is where the journal doesn't publish it anymore. You likely are going to potentially lose your job. There's lots of people that are losing their job now. And you will be made an example of, right? And this is, it's uncomfortable because we don't have mechanisms right now to show how to do this legitimately without, penalizing people too much. And that's what's happening right now, is we're sort of overreacting as a field when people do these things. And some people are getting severely penalized and other people not so much, right? And I want you to really think about this. We're really trying to grapple with things. And so how do we protect ourselves? It's really about thinking about who we actually are. If we're going to treat other people, and including ourselves, our internal dialogue, if we're going to treat ourselves really well, and we're going to make sure that we are going to treat other people really well, we're going to show compassion, we're going to show empathy, we're going to do things that people don't like talking about. We are going to stand up and do uncomfortable things. And if we can work on that collectively, where we are okay with being open, then we're going to prevent a lot of scientific misconduct. And how do we do things? How do we become open? It sucks, right? It's difficult to be open, but this is where you have to take a step back and say, what does it mean to be open? And that's where you have to say, I am good enough. I'm going to do this. I need to change this internal dialogue. I need to work on this so I can stand up and say things that are uncomfortable about myself and about other people. And once we get over that, we will make a lot of progress with preventing scientific misconduct. I know none of this is what people tell you, but this is the truth. This is what you're going to go through whenever you're doing scientific research. You're going to think that nobody else knows. We have all been there. And you just have to be careful to the best of your ability. Now, you could do the other things like replication, all those things. You're going to replicate your results many, many times anyways. Be as transparent as possible and open as possible. Don't be hiding anything. As soon as you have that feeling is, I can't present this, take a step back and say, why do I feel like this? What is going on? And remind yourself you're already remarkable, and you can go forward with what you are doing and present that research no matter how much warts it has and how ugly it is, and keep taking steps forward. If you do this, you will protect yourself to some degree from scientific or research misconduct. All right, take care. Hopefully you learned a little bit from this. What is scientific research misconduct? How do we deal with this? What is the way that I think we can actually get around this? And then we're, giving you some hints, or I'm giving you some hints to deal with this. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.